Welcome back to another episode of 40 Facts About the 40K Universe. I am your host Gershwin and you are watching One Mind Syndicate. Today we continue talking about the Tau Empire as we get into all the mercenaries and auxiliary units the Tau possesses. If you're new to the channel, subscribe. We post Warhammer 40K content every single day, and if you have any suggestions, comment down below. But with that said, let's get into 40 facts on the Tau Auxiliaries. Several intelligent Xeno races have allied themselves with the Tau Empire. Each alien race has a unique and different culture which contributes to the greater good in its own way. However, all of the Tau Empire's races hold to their own common beliefs in the greater good, and it all binds them together, despite their many cultural and physical differences. One of the most well-known Tau auxiliary races is the Kroot. The Kroot are a sentient xeno-species of savage, bird-like humanoids who have allied themselves to the Tau Empire during the Tau's first sphere of expansion. While their allegiance is extremely solid, members of this species are known as formidable mercenaries throughout the galaxy. The appearance of a Kroot may change, their biology is very diverse, but for the most part, an average Kroot stands 1.5 feet taller than most humans, their avian ancestry giving them a bird-like beak and long quills protruding from their heads like hair. Smaller quills, possibly the evolutionary remnants of feathers, can be found scattered all over their bodies. The most unique feature of the Kroot is the ability to manipulate their own evolution by selectively consuming their defeated foes and absorbing their unique traits. These traits are usually chosen by a Kroot leader known as a Shaper. The Shaper instructs his clan, also known as a kindred, as to what type of enemy to consume. The eating of their foes ties in with the religious beliefs of the Kroot. They believe that when a warrior of any race dies, his warrior spirit should be kept. The only way to do this is by eating his flesh. The Kroot practice this in their burial customs, in which the body of the deceased is consumed by the kindred. Kroot who prey exclusively on particular species will begin to take on the characteristics of that creature. In sentient species such as orcs and humans, they may also take on cultural aspects of that race. Kroot who have fed on Drukhari, for example, soon begin to show signs of the cunning and intense cruelty the Dark Eldar are known for. In the case of consuming animals, this sometimes leads to evolutionary dead ends. A kindred will find itself locked into an animalistic and unintelligent form, unable to evolve themselves anymore. Species such as Tyranids, who also absorb the DNA of their prey, are particularly dangerous for Kroot to prey upon, as they may acquire too many undesirable Tyranid characteristics. The Kroot's homeworld is the planet of Pek. It is a world filled with massive evergreen forests, populated by the hardy Jaga tree, which covers most of the prime continent. The other regions of Pek that are not covered by forest are mainly inhospitable ranges of rock cliffs and jagged mountains. It is from Pek's deep forest that the Kroot originated, and there they live within arboreal colonies, many kindreds led by wise and ancient Kroot shapers. Most make their homes nestled amongst the higher branches of the trees, from animal hides and regurgitated deadwood pulp. The ecology of the Kroot homeworld includes many species of animals that are partially Kroot, the results of kindred's evolutionary missteps. The Kroot use these related creatures as laborers, pack animals, and even as weapons. The most common examples are the canine Kroot hounds, the lumbering and powerful ape-like Krootoxes, the Narlock riding beasts, and the massive, dinosaur-like Great Narlocks. One of the most important creatures on Pek is the Kroot hawk, an animal held sacred by the Kroot, possibly because it may be the evolutionary ancestor of the Kroot. There are other subspecies that are considered outcast in Kroot society, and are killed by the Kroot if found. The Tau race first encountered the Kroot when an exploration fleet outside of the Tau subworld of Dalith picked up long-range scans of orc ships firing on a Kroot warp sphere. The previously unencountered Kroot were defending their enclaves on the planet of Krath, although they were hopelessly outnumbered. Intending only to observe, the Tau were drawn into battle, as both the Aircast Admiral and the Firecast Commander could not bear to watch the honorless orcs bludgeon their way to victory. Quickly deploying their superior fleet, the Tau destroyed the ramshackled greenskin ship. Unfortunately, they realized that this was merely the vanguard of a mighty invasion force that was closing in on them in an encircling pattern. Thus began an extended war, both in space and over several planets, later named the War in the Place of Union, for it marked the first time that the Tau and the Kroot fought side by side. So effective was the sudden alliance that they withstood the orcs long enough for reinforcements to arrive, and ultimately triumphed over the greenskins. The Tau were so impressed with the Kroot's fighting prowess, they agreed to extend the alliance in order to liberate the remainder of the Kroot enclaves, who are also under orc attack. For the next 10 years, the Tau helped drive all signs of orcs from the Kroot worlds, eventually coming to their homeworld of Pack at the behests of the great Kroot leader, the legendary Angkor Proc. There, at the sacred Oath Stone, the Kroot leader swore allegiance to the Tau Empire and pledged his warriors to fight for the greater good. That pledge and the cooperation between the two races is still honored today. The two races have continued to work on their relationship, as some of the Tau still see the Kroot as too savage for the greater good. The struggle for the Tau to understand the Kroot culture can best be seen in a letter sent by an Earthcast who lived on Pack. The letter goes as follows. When I was told that there was a spare capacity in the message boat, I could not resist writing to you, my sister. I trust you prosper, as Tau shall. The greatest of the Empire is truly a marvel, for the last 3 campaigns have been on Pack, homeworld to the barbaric Kroot. Fear not, sister. Their propensity for savage behavior is thoroughly held in check by their desire to be part of the greater Tau Empire. They allow us to go where we will, and readily submit to medical inspections so we can better understand them and guide them forward. I do have to tell you that if our preliminary research is substantiated, then our estimation of the Kroot will have to be revised considerably. Our most remarkable finding is that the Kroot are capable of selective mutation. We now have evidence that the life form we refer to as Kroot is merely the most successful of a wide range of divergent species within the same genetic root. Their form can evolve significantly over the span of 4 or 5 generations, while for most species, evolution is a journey so gradual that it cannot be witnessed by mortals. I have seen Kroot return from service who have developed the ability to withstand chlorine atmospheres in the course of a few years. Major changes, I would suggest, are possible, but require a great exposure to the source of the mutation, possibly over several generations. In this case, the source of mutation is their diet. As we have known for some time, the Kroot feed on the flesh of the dead, an unwholesome and primitive practice, which many hoped we could persuade them to abandon. But in fact, this practice is the source of the Kroot's greatest strength and their largest potential contribution to the Empire. The Kroot are organized into family groups. The elder of their group is apparently able to analyze the content of its gut and extract from it characteristics that might be used for the Kroot's genetic code. This task is apparently performed intuitively, but demonstrates a mastery that the finest minds of our race could struggle to conceptualize. Once a characteristic of their prey is identified, then the Shaper will direct members of the family group to consume this particular prey animal. Breeding is then controlled to ensure that those who have absorbed the chosen genetic morsel fix it as part of their own DNA. From the standpoint of pure survival, we have a species that when faced with a more dominant life form, can absorb its characteristics within a very short time. It is likely that the Kroot have used this technique extensively, as within every broad category of fauna on Pack, there is an example which is 99% Kroot. The Kroot have evolved from avians, that much is clear, although whether its original form was similar to the Kroot hawk is speculation. Life abounds on Pack's primary continent, so the Proto-Kroot could always feed, but for their genetic quirk, they would have remained in their state while other life forms become the dominant species. The cause of the anomaly is unknown, but at some point, the Kroot genetic code began to mutate. As I hope you have learned, sister, the bulk of the normal DNA contains no data, but merely serves to divide the data that does exist. The Kroot's mutation turned this space into a blank slate for retention of new genetic code. The mutation is not random in its working. Instead, the Kroot seem to be able to make choices. The more complex the DNA of the food, the more likely the Kroot will absorb something useful. Successful adaptations thrive, others die out. The overall effect was a rapid, accelerated evolutionary program which left the Kroot the dominant species on Pack long before such a situation should have been possible. The Kroot brain is unusual insofar that it is a combination of cerebral hemispheres and a cluster of ganglia. The ganglia run the length of their crests and are very efficient at interpreting sensory information, a feature which, combined with their superb senses, make the Kroot very difficult to hide from. In this regard, The ganglia are similar in function to the Tau's thalamus. They have two cerebral hemispheres, one behind the other. The front hemisphere controls logic and memory and is considerably more developed than the other hemisphere, which governs imagination and creativity. Kroot interpret what they perceive and react accordingly, with little emotional clutter. The rear hemisphere is another mutation. It controls their inventiveness and imagination and has a very limited capacity. While it is more pronounced in some Kroot kindreds, this limits the Kroot's creativity considerably, with the consequence that they have gone about as far technologically as they are likely to go without the help of more sophisticated people. The Kroot have little capacity for further mutations, without seriously destabilizing their DNA. They cannot therefore acquire every advanced trait they encounter, or their variety will end, trapped in single form that is a genetic dead end. Kroot hounds and Krootoks are example of this error being made in the past. Kroot history is littered with these evolutionary cul-de-sacs, although their rapid development is a testament to their effectiveness. The Kroot digestive system is capable of breaking down virtually any organic substance to a pure energy form, which they retain in organs called nymunes spread throughout the body. The stored energy can be used to maintain the Kroot during a lengthy hibernation period. The Kroot, as carrion eaters, are quite content to wait out their prey, and can initiate a state of hibernation at will, during which their metabolism slows to a halt. The Kroot are a bizarre mixture of evolutionary quirks, unable to urinate or defecate. They have probably the most efficient digestive systems I have ever examined. Virtually nothing they consume is wasted, although some undigestible material is regurgitated, and chemicals synthesized from their food are released as thick, viscous sweat. Their stench is unbearable to me. I am sure they realize this, although they reign ignorance. Yesterday, a particularly foul-smelling beast named Omutu spent the whole light time following me around, giving off a range of odors that amused the other Kroot but left me nauseous. I am sure he found it funny. I suppose I should have been glad to discover that there is such a thing as Kroot humor. Standing about 30% taller than us, the Kroot are lean and wiry. They have muscles like metal cables, able to pull taut in an instant, giving them a jerky, deceptively fast gait. They can jump large distances when they need to, and can maneuver through the branches of trees with practiced ease. They seem to ignore shifts in climate and atmosphere. They have a rapport with other wildlife that is probably based on the fact that the Kroot are only interested in such life forms as food when they are dead. Although their own language is a mixture of clicks, hawks, and hoots, the Kroot are superb mimics and are able to link sounds to a practical piece of body language very quickly. Last Rada, I spent a few decks teaching a Kroot youngling to speak Tau. He could make himself understood by dark time, and is now one of our escorts. While we cannot be certain, it is our current belief that the Kroot still have the capacity for further selective mutation. There seems to be several different approaches to achieving this among the Kroot. All shapers seem to belong to one of a number of kindreds, each seeking a different path. This is the nearest thing to a nation we have found amongst the Kroot. We have evidence that each kindred has a fractionally different genetic code to the others. We immediately saw that despite their apparent primitivism, the Kroot enjoyed a caste system related to our own. This reassures us considerably, and over our time, we have come to care for our hosts and the unsophisticated creatures they are. With our guidance, they will prosper. I have spoken with Shazla Town Rakana, who most often guards us on our travels. He tells me that the Kroot are fearsome warriors, and that now they are being supplied with charged rounds for their rifles. They will be a valuable addition to the Empire's forces. We have both remarked on how Peck has the vestigial trace of industry and manufacture, yet the Kroot lifestyle is wholly primitive. We have no idea how on one hand they can operate huge warp spheres, but on the other live in trees bound together with regurgitated dead wood. We have detected unusual energy emissions from some hills nearby, and will investigate shortly. The Shazla has remarked to me that he has noticed a far greater variety of Kroot kindred on Peck than he has seen serving in our armies. This is odd, as many of the Kroot on Peck are clearly warriors, and liable under the terms of annexation to military service. A while back, I saw a warp sphere disembarking its warriors, among which were many injured Kroot. I checked with command, and was told that there have been no sanctioned combat involving Kroot recently. It is therefore my conclusion that many Kroot still pursue their own lifestyle as mercenaries outside the control of the Tau Empire. We were aware that not all Kroot were in agreement with annexation, so we assumed that the dissidents had left Pek to pursue their nomadic lifestyle. Their activities do not disturb us, but their periodic return to Pek is at worst a destabilizing influence, and at best, a break on the progress we have planned for their species. As I mentioned, there are many species on Pek which have emerged from the Kroot. We have identified 3 closely related species already. The oldest stable form we have been able to find is the reclusive winged species, about half the height of a normal Kroot. This variety of Kroot hawk lives in the remote nests at the top of the tallest jaga trees and is independent of the Kroot proper. The Kroots we question tell us that the Kroot hawks are sacred to them and have always been the way they are. We have yet to secure a specimen for examination and have decided that it would be indiscreet to simply shoot one. The Kroot hounds are undeniably descended from the same root as the Kroot themselves. We have surmised that they are the remains of a previous kindred selective mutation. Perhaps they sought to emulate a successful pack hunter, but whatever their intention, they became entirely locked into this one form. Evolution for them now is no different than any animal found on other planets. Their form is particularly vile though. While I have learned to regard the Kroot with some affection, I despise the Kroot hounds. They are slavering brutes, which will kill even when they are well fed. I once found myself alone when a Kroot hound happened by. It just stared at me, sniffing and growling. The more nervous I got, the more it growled. I am sure it would have attacked me, but Mataba, the shaper in charge of our escort, appeared out of the trees, and without an apparent communication, the Kroot hound slunk off. The Krootoks are different again. They wander the forest floors in large clans, feeding off the molds that cover the lower trunks of the jaga trees. They are huge creatures, and are as strong as any warrior in a crisis suit. They are short-tempered, but essentially harmless. Just as the Kroot hounds are trapped in their feral form, the Krootoks are trapped as grazing beasts. I suspect that they have a measure more intelligence, though have been impressed by their loyalty to the Kroot. When a Krootoks is domesticated, it becomes attached to his master to the extent that it will die to protect them. Droken joked that they were as faithful to the Kroot as we are to the ethereal ones. I explained to him that there was more to our devotion than simple reaction to exuding chemical odors. The Krootoks are used as beasts of burden and are the most reliable of animals. When angered, they are said to be terrifying, but I have yet to see them so. I have noted that the Kroot are careful not to mistreat them though. There are many other species on Pek, closely related to the Kroot. Mataba has warned me that some are outcasts among the Kroot and are killed if found. I shudder to think the horror that Mataba considers worthy of a warning. The Shaper is a formidable creature and has served us well. So sister, if the thinkers back home try to tell you that the Kroot are just primitives who don't deserve to share our destiny, you tell them they are wrong. It is wonderful that because of the Empire, we can study such fascinating creatures and enlist their support in our greater purpose. The next message boat will not be here for at least 2 cycles, but I will write again then. Many reports, aside from this letter, showcase the diversity of Kroot culture. With the Tau lack in melee combat, the Kroot over-exemplify. The most notable report that showcases this ability is the report of an Eldar encounter with the Kroot. The report goes as follows. Laresh carefully scanned the moonlit trees before the ranger squad, the muzzle of her long rifle following the movements of her eyes. Her every senses was attuned to the rhythm of the forest, altered by something out of place, something alien. Nothing disturbed the quiet except the ordinary sounds of animal life she had come to expect. Had any of her enemies been nearby, the native creatures would have fled or given some other warning of their presence. Satisfied, she lowered the rifle and lifted her right fist, the finger spread, the sign that all was well. Laresh returned the rifle to her shoulder, soundlessly rising from a crouched position, and crept forward, each step carefully placed as she advanced through the trees. The 5 Eldar Rangers moved like ghosts as they worked their way forward, chameleon-lined cloaks shifting in hue until the Eldar scouts were all but invisible. Laresh stalked silently towards a wide-trunked vine tree. Then all hell broke loose. Laresh spun as a Kroot dropped from the trees behind her, the powerful alien rearing over her, shaking the quills on the back of his head and hissing a challenge. She twisted, bringing her rifle to bear, but the enormous Kroot swung the blade attached to his primitive firearm up and hacked through the barrel as she pressed the firing stud. The rifle's charging chamber exploded in a searing white fireball, and Laresh fell, burnt and half blinded. Most of the Kroot's head had blasted away, and it toppled forward, pinning her against the tree. Dancing motes of light, after images searing onto her retina, burst before her as she blinked furiously, simultaneously trying to clear her vision and pushing the dead Kroot away. The night echoed with screams as more Kroot burst from hiding and leapt upon the Eldar scouts. Laresh saw her cousin, Kulierin, defending himself from 2 Kroot, and then screamed his name as a third drove a blade through his back, the tip bursting from his chest in a spray of blood. She watched Finnegual and Doltha drop their long rifles and draw their shuriken pistols, as Mendhar was bludgeoned to death. Now it was the Kroot's turn to die, as the air was filled with deadly razor-edged projectiles slicing through their alien flesh with ease. For a moment, Laresh dared hope that they might live through this until Dulthwa's head was ripped from her shoulders by the powerful hand of the Kroot warrior. Finnegual spun to face the leader of the Kroot and fired his pistol at point-blank range, the monomolecular disc tearing through his side. The alien took no notice, and Finnegual was lifted high into the air as the Kroot slammed the bladed butt of his rifle into his belly. Laresh wept as her comrade was held suspended, screaming as blood fountained from his body. The Kroot wrapped a hand around the victim's neck and wrenched the blade from the body. He pulled the dying Eldar close and tore a bloody chunk of flesh from his neck with his powerful beaked jaw. Laresh tried to work her hand down to her holster as the horrifying sound of the Kroot feasting on her friends reached her, bone snapping as the Kroot tore their victim apart, devouring the still warm organs within. Her hand closed on the smooth grip of her pistol. She drew and fired in one motion, almost beheading one of the blood-stained Kroot. A backhanded blow knocked the pistol flying, and a rifle butt slammed into her face. Blood filled her nose. Dazed, she felt herself being dragged out from beneath the dead Kroot, hearing the clicking, whistling language of her captor. Her limbs were seized in vice-like grips, holding her immobile. She screamed as she felt the Kroot fasten their jaws onto her leg and begin feeding. She was still alive as the Kroot broke her ribcage open. The Kroot leader, devouring her heart, was the last thing Laresh ever saw. Surprisingly enough, one of the most common Tau auxiliaries to have fought the Imperium are Guevesas, humans that turned to the Tau Empire. The Guevesas, which literally means human helper in the Tau lexicon, is the name that the Tau have given those humans who have willingly joined the Tau Empire. Many Guevesas now fight alongside the Fire Caste on behalf of the greater good. They even take up arms when required against their fellow humans of the Imperium of Man. The ethereal caste of the Tau understand that the best path to survival in the face of the Imperium of Man's colossal war machine lies in the peaceful absorption of Imperial worlds and assets wherever possible. In pursuit of this objective, the Tau water castes have launched many diplomatic missions with varying degrees of success in turning Imperial citizens to the service of the greater good. The Tau face steep opposition in their efforts, as most humans of the Imperium displace a fierce hatred of all Xenos and abiding belief in the human supremacy of the Imperial Creed. Some of the water caste's initiatives have resulted in the smooth transition of Imperial planets to a new allegiance to the Tau Empire, while others have unleashed the full wrath of the Imperium on the Tau. The water caste is in charge of the diplomatic ventures taken in the name of the greater good. They are in the forefront of the cultural assimilation of Imperial citizens. Knowing every victory of diplomacy spares them a potential costly military campaign, the Ethereals and Water Caste attempt to appeal to every level of Imperial society by emphasizing the many different aspects of the greater good. To broaden the appeal of membership in the Tau Empire, the Tau guarantee protection from Imperial retribution to rebellious planetary governors. They also promise the nobility who control planetary commerce lucrative new sources of income and new technologies in the Tau Empire, where they will be free from the mandatory tithes and excessive bureaucracy of the Imperium. The Tau also promised that all humans will be allowed to enjoy the freedom of religion, so long as the practice of that faith does not conflict with the greater good. This is a freedom that is unimaginable on the Imperial worlds, where rigorous adherence to the Imperial cult is always enforced. Perhaps the most alluring aspect of the greater good to the common Imperial citizen is the belief that all those who contribute toward it have a meaningful and valued place within the Tau society, in place of the relatively low value the Imperium places on individual human life. The Tau seem to believe that everyone has a place and everyone matters. A perfect example of this process occurred during the Taros campaign, when the desert mining world of Taros was annexed by the Tau Empire. Not only did the population of Taros not oppose the move, since the world had developed an extremely lucrative trade and strategic ores with the Tau, but the Tarosian Planetary Defense Force actually fought against the Imperial forces sent to reclaim the world for the Emperor, as the Guevesas shoulder to shoulder with their new Tau allies. Many of the Guevesas can trace their origins back to the Damocles Gulf Crusade, when the First Imperial War against the Tau grounded to a stalemate. The Imperial forces decided to retreat and redeploy their troops against a much more pressing threat in the eastern fringe of the galaxy, namely the Tyranid High Fleet Behemoth. The withdrawal was so fast that many troops of the Imperial Guard were simply abandoned in Tau-controlled regions of space. Oshava, or Commander Farsight as he is known to the Imperium, gave these humans the option of joining the Tau Empire, an offer that most accepted. They were treated well by the Tau, and were even allowed to continue worshipping the God Emperor and maintain their faith in the Imperial cult, though their version of the faith was purged of any fanaticism and xenophobia sentiment that were commonplace in the Imperium. As time passed, these humans and their children turned from being reluctant converts to enthusiastic believers in the greater good. They now hope to spread the greater good and what they view as the extraordinary benefits of the Tau Empire to all of their fellow human beings across the galaxy. One such Imperial soldier was Jankum Slovas. Slovas was formerly an Imperial guardman in the 19th Bridlock Dragoons. He was listed as missing in action after the regiment was left behind in Tau space during the Damocles Gulf Crusade. The regiment surrendered after its commissars allegedly died in combat. Decades later, Slovas would front a Tau propaganda campaign describing the fair and humane treatment human prisoners of war could expect to receive if they surrendered to the Tau military. He would later be branded as excommunicate traitorous by the Imperium for heretical interactions with Xenos, a fate often shared by nearly all Imperial citizens that joined the Tau Empire, regardless of their position in the hierarchy of the Imperium. Guevesas are now a common sight in the Tau Empire, especially in the western portion of the Empire in the Segmentum Ultima that borders Imperial space, and several can even be found on the Tau homeworld of Tau. In general, the Guevesas are content with their position in the Tau Empire, and treated well under Tau rule, but still often worship the God Emperor with a more moderate set of beliefs. These humans maintain colonies in Tau space, and are provided with advanced Tau technology to survive on the frontier. They have some manufacturing capabilities and can produce things ranging from farming tools to copies of the standard Imperial pattern of the las gun, which they use to defend themselves against the dangers to be found on a newly settled colony world. The Tau have been known to show pictures of these Guevesas contently working in their new homes to other Imperial humans as proof of the many benefits awaiting any Imperial citizen who devotes themselves to the greater good. In times of war, the Tau provide units of Guevesas with advanced Tau weaponry, such as pulse rifles, pulse carbines, and other more specialized Tau equipment. These human troops then serve in the Firecast's Auxiliary. These auxiliaries have become a respected part of the Tau military in the border regions of the Tau Empire, where they fill a tactical niche between the barbaric Kroot and the mainstay of Tau empires, the Firecast warriors. Hylock Freemen are elite Guevesa auxiliaries used by the Tau Sept of Velkan Han in the Jericho Reach. They are hardy men and women from the planet Hylock 4, another abandoned Imperial colony, which joined the Tau when their empire expanded into the Jericho Reach. Coming from a high-gravity world, the Freemen are short and stocky, but are heavily armed and armored. They are often used by the Tau as shock troops to break open holes in enemy formations. Not all humans accept Tau rule widely or eagerly, the same way that the population of Tauros willingly joined the Tau Empire. For example, many humans on the Tau-controlled world of Cronus resent or outright resist the Tau for 200 standard years after the world was initially conquered. Human on Tau violence was not unknown, with a notable example being when a man styling himself as an Imperial commissar murdered 2 Earthcast workers in front of a mob of humans, and then incited them to riot. Such people are not referred to as Guevesa by the Tau, instead receiving the derogatory name Guevla, which translates simply as human. These rebellious humans are often removed from the population as to not allow their actions to spread into the rest of the population. If a violent human has a prestigious role within the human society, the Tau are known to sterilize and brainwash them to become a compliant citizen. The daily life of a Guevesa depends on the world in which he lives in. If the Tau absorbed an agri-world, the Guevesa will experience a relatively similar life to that in the Imperium, but with much more freedom. Farmers will be expected to produce the same amount of crop yield as before, but not the rigorous routine of worship. On a hive world, the human inhabitants will be freed from the constant pressure of producing imperial tithes, but will still instead be asked to fight for the Tau Empire. For a much greater number of hive worlds, living under the Tau rule means the ability to leave their hive world and explore the Empire. They will always be expected to contribute to the greater good. Caste systems in these hive worlds will more than likely stay the same. The Tau will interact with the humans on the higher part of the imperial hierarchy, and the lower hives will remain the same. The second most well-known Tau auxiliary are the Vespids. The Vespids are a sentient, insect-like xenospecies who developed a powerful and efficient crystal-based technology not seen anywhere else in the galaxy, as well as training a highly mobile and dangerous military force. These 2 unique attributes drew the attention of the Tau, and after some mysterious negotiations, all Vespids became members of the Tau Empire. The Vespid biology is extremely unique, and while insect in appearance, it is by no means primitive. Unlike insects, the Vespids walk in a bipedal manner when not utilizing their membrane-covered wings, which, like the rest of their bodies, is protected by a tough exoskeleton. When next to an average Imperial Guardsman, the male Vespid is much taller, but even larger and more frightening are the females of their species. And while the exoskeleton may vary in color, on average, the Vespids have a greenish-blue hue. Each of their 2 arms end in diamond-hard claws, which evolved over ancient times when they were used to excavate tunnels in the rocks of their drifting islands on their homeworld. These claws are so powerful they can easily tear through most infantry armor. The Vespids' frightening appearance is also attributed to their 3 pairs of beady little eyes, known as ocelli. The uppermost pair is believed to see in the ultraviolet spectrum, the middle in the spectrum of visible light, and the lower in the infrared. Because of this, a Vespid has a field of vision much more advanced than any xenospecies. Each adult Vespid has 2 large antennae that control minor olfactory nerves. Like a Terran insect, a Vespid smells with his antennae, but unlike an insect, these antennae are not mobile, simply shifting direction like a panel. It is also of note that Vespids have no visible auditory receptors, but their wings emit a continuous ultrasonic tone, and it is believed by Imperial xenobiologists that this tone modulates and controls the workings of their crystal-based technology. Vespids were first encountered by the Tau Empire on their homeworld of Vespid. The planet is 3 light-years to the galactic south of the Tau's Dione Sept. The Tau were extremely surprised when they found sentient life on the planet, as it was a tumultuous and deadly gas giant plagued by numerous massive storms. What allowed the planet to sustain life were the thousands of floating islands of rock that were able to levitate due to the lighter-than-air gas trapped inside. Like giant stalactites hovering in the upper atmospheres, these flat-topped boulders were so large that air pressure could vary between the different levels. Eventually, these environmental conditions allowed for two crucial things to happen. The first came in the lower levels, where after thousands of years, a whole host of exotic crystals were formed in the lower levels of the floating island. The second was that at some point, the top levels became a breeding ground for life, eventually giving birth to the ancient Vespids, who made their home by excavating their giant structures. Remarkably, the natural design of the island worked perfectly for the Vespids' digging nature. The floating landmasses were covered in trillions of gas-filled pockets, much like a loaf of bread, which meant that if a Vespid cracked open one of these gas-filled chambers, the island didn't run the risk of losing buoyancy and come crashing down. Once the species dug deep enough, they discovered the unique crystals that grew in many of these distinctive gas chambers, which only the large female Vespids had the constitution to reach and harvest. These crystals became the basis of the species' technology. As the species grew, they spread throughout the entire planet, thanks in part to their one-of-a-kind flying abilities. Like their floating homes, the Vespids have thousands of small pockets of gas that fill their bodies and grant them flight, or more accurately, give them the ability to hover through the air like the ancient Terran bees. This biology is designed in a way that allows them to fly in almost any environment. In the end, every floating island on Vespid was colonized, and each island became an independent nation with its own leadership and traits. The Tau instantly saw a race that held great potential value for the greater good, and came to greatly covet their crystal-based technologies. Even more surprising to the Tau was that the Vespids held an incredibly stable society. The Tau named the Vespids Malcor, meaning air insects in the Tau lexicon. Unfortunately, when the Tau's diplomatic caste, the Water Caste, attempted to communicate with the Vespids, they found that the species' mindset was completely alien. Unlike other races encountered by the Tau, who simply had a different language or form of speech, the Vespids articulated the world around them completely different. At first, Vespids actually viewed the Tau as beings of lesser intelligence. The issue was resolved at the command of the Ethereal Caste, who issued instructions on the construction of an interface device that forged a connection between the two species and facilitated communication. These devices were called communion helms and were gifted to the senior Vespids. The moment the device was employed, the Vespid not only registered the Tau as fellow sentients, but also instantly understood the concept of the greater good and their place within it as warriors. Agreeing to fight for the greater good, the Vespids also allowed the Tau Empire access to their crystal technology. The Earth Caste quickly began work on the Neutron Blaster, a hybrid of Vespid and Tau technology. The bulk of the Neutron Blaster is of Tau engineering, but mounted on the barrel of the weapon is a highly energetic and unstable crystal harvested from the lower chambers of the largest stalactite islands of the Vespid homeworld. The weapon has a highly efficient neutron containment and projection system, making them amongst the most deadly weapons of their type, capable of emitting short-range but deadly streams of neutron radiation that are able to pass straight through all but the best armor and reduce biological matter or delicate machine circuitry to cinder. Unfortunately, this deadly weapon can only be used by the Vespids, as the crystal neutron radiation can be modulated only by the vibration of their wings. Without this control, the radiation is extremely lethal to any other species. The Earth Caste also designed special armor, made of a material known as mesoplorum. It is a similar composite material to that worn in the armor of the Tau Fire Warrior infantry, and the Vespids were given the design and freedom to manufacture this material on their own. To the senior officers of the Vespids, known as strain leaders, was given the communion helm, which communicated the desires of the Tau ethereals, and the message is then disseminated to those Vespids under the command of these leaders. These Tau auxiliary forces became known as the Vespid Stingwings, and instantly showcased their fighting prowess against the Imperium, as their speed and ability to fly under almost any condition proved deadly for any foe. Those few warriors who have survived a Stingwing attack state that they appear from nowhere, darting out of concealment to unleash a devastating burst of neutron fire. It often comes as an unpleasant surprise to the enemy when he discovers the flank he thought was anchored by dense terrain has in fact been infiltrated by the Vespids. Incredibly fast-moving and a highly mobile force, the Stingwings are integrated into Tau Hunter cadres, where they act as scouts alongside infiltrating Pathfinder teams. Vespids have also been deployed as reserve for cadres possessed of a high number of crisis teams. Their speed and maneuverability allows them to respond to orders and react to threats with astonishing speed. Reliable and powerful, the Vespid Stingwings have gained more respect and honor from Tau Fire Warriors than any other Tau auxiliary or mercenary force within the Empire. To date, the Tau Empire has fielded Vespid Stingwings in a number of campaigns against the Imperium of Man, where they have gained a terrible reputation and are always subject to numerous battlefield myths. One of these myths was that Vespids were prone to consume their fallen. This tale was believed by many in the Imperium's upper command echelons, but is now believed to have been a simple case of misidentification between the Stingwings and the more barbaric Kroot. The name Stingwing was of course a title given to the Vespid warriors by the Astra Militarum. In fact, this is a nickname coined by the Imperial Guardsmen of the 15th and 11th Army Group that was posted to defend the Imperial frontier worlds bordering the northern marshes of the Tau Empire. The name comes from the myth that the Vespids would kill guardsmen in close combat by stinging them. And while they do possess a vestigial stinger, no actual battlefield reports exist to indicate that this has ever been used as an offensive weapon. Aside from these three major races, the Tau Empire is made up of a dozen other xeno-species that the Imperium has very little record about. Whether it's because of their population size, or because these species aren't found on the front lines, there is very little known about these Tau auxiliary. But based on Imperial records collected, there are at least over half a dozen xeno races actively working alongside the Tau Empire. The Nikasar are a xeno-species of powerful psychers who are allied with the Tau Empire. The Nikasar are driven by an insatiable curiosity to explore and travel across the galaxy. The Nikasar's curiosity led them to the original exploration of their home system, as they are only truly content when traveling. The race is semi-nomadic. They can survive for long periods in virtual hibernation as a result of their alien physiology. Because of this, they have traveled far from their homeworld, albeit slowly. First contact between the Nikasar and the Tau Empire came when a Tau vessel was setting up a way station in interstellar space and sighted the Nikasar flotilla that had been in space for centuries. Further contact and negotiation with the Nikasar led to the race becoming subjects of the Tau Empire and serving the greater good. Their contribution to the greater good is the provision of starships for the Tau Navy, particularly vessels involved with reconnaissance and exploration duties, which are often crewed by the Nikasar themselves, rather than the Tau air caste. The propulsion and navigation of the Nikasar vessels stem from their potent psychic powers that define the Nikasar species. The most famous Nikasar starship is known as a Dao. It is a relatively small star-faring yacht, propelled primarily by their captain's potent telekinetic powers, abilities which often determine who rises to positions of leadership in the Nikasar society. The species starships are primarily sleeper ships, in which the majority of the crew enters a state of hibernation and bands together in a flotilla, consisting of multiple Daos docked together. It drifts between stars, directed by the efforts of few non-hibernating Nikasar crewmen. Although poorly armed when they are first encountered by the Tau, the original weapons employed by the Nikasar Dao have been upgraded to the Tau railgun batteries. The Tau Empire uses Nikasar Daos as escort vessels for the Tau Navy, towing them across interstellar distances using the limited warp drive employed by the Tau starships to travel across the galaxy. When not being used by the Tau Navy, the Nikasar vessels are used as scouts and explore star systems on the fringes of the Tau Empire. They are transported to their station by Tau vessels using gravitic hooks that are capable of interstellar travel through the warp, and commence a leisurely circuit, reporting anything they can find. Along with the Nikasar, the Geactrix are another xeno-species used by the Tau Empire for spaceflight. They are an ethereal xeno-species that has an affinity for the void and skills at spacefaring. Another common Tau auxiliary are the Taurelians, more commonly known in the Imperium of Man as Taurelian dog soldiers because of their snouts and their preference for working as mercenaries. They are a minor reptilian species of xenos found throughout the galaxy, but are of little consequence to its affairs. Tyrellian dog soldiers appear as broad-shouldered reptilians with narrow waists that are slightly shorter in stature than most humans. The Tyrellians possess a zealot hatred for mankind above all other people in the galaxy because of the Imperium's decision to launch exterminatus attacks upon the Tyrellian homeworlds during the Great Crusade. They nearly wiped out their entire species in a horrific way through the use of virus bombs. Billions of their kind were slaughtered in the most horrific manner possible, and the Tyrellian species never fully recovered from this terrible xenocide. The Imperium's actions, which were a standard response to meeting with another intelligent race at the time, destroyed the Tellurian potential to grow into one of the most dominant races of the galaxy, and created their eternal grudge against the servants of the Emperor. It is very common for Tellurian dog soldiers to be encountered within the Tau Empire, particularly when Tau forces face the Imperium of Man, because of this ancient grudge. It is important to note that the Tellurians have not been conquered or annexed by the Tau, nor do they hold the ideals of the greater good. Rather, the Tyrellians continue to serve the Tau as mercenaries and hold them to be excellent clients who always pay well and on time. The latest blow to the remaining Tyrellians was the destruction of another Tyrellian civilization that was devoured by the Tyranid High Fleet Moloch as it advanced through the galactic north from the Kiltor sector. Another common sight within the Tau Auxiliary are the Gaugs. Members of the Gaug race are frog-like, having wide, toothy maws, small eyes, and a pair of small, inward-facing antennas atop their heads. Gaug's barrel-shaped bodies are covered in green scales and appear to most humans as large humanoid frogs. As with most alien species in the galaxy, the Gaug hate mankind because of the Imperium's intolerance for all intelligent alien races. The Tau Empire has exploited this hatred and normally maintains a small number of Gaug mercenaries within their ranks, but the Gaugs themselves can be found in employ of many different factions across the galaxy, as long as the price is right. Imperial records have shown a variety of different Xeno races fighting alongside the Tau Fire Warriors. This includes the Moralians, the Ranghong, Hrenians, Formosians, and Yabi Yabi. But almost no information on their biology has been collected. All xenobiologists know is that they have attacked the Imperium in the name of the Tau Empire. For manual labor, the Tau Empire has relied on the Anthracods, a sturdy, dim-witted race that has proved well-suited for asteroid mining. For cargo hauling, the Ganache are another species used by the Tau Empire. Unmatched and delicate assembly of small plasma generators needed to fuel the Tau Earthcast inventions. The Brachyura are a tiny, dexterous-limbed crustacean race that is part of the Tau Empire. Most unique in the Tau Empire are the Greed, an invertebrate xenospecies from the ocean world of Isla Su. They joined the Tau Empire after the Earthcast agreed to build them floating factories in a negotiation led by the Golden Ambassador. This in turn paid for the protection of their planet by Tau space stations and allowed the Greed to contribute to the greater good. The Nagi are a Xenos race from the world of Shagalud. Highly intelligent worm-like creatures, the small Nagi are known for their mind control abilities. When they were first discovered by the Tau Empire, they were despised by the Tau, who fought a series of violent conflicts with them. However, they have since agreed to a peace accord and have joined the Tau Empire. Nagis frequently serve as advisors to the ethereal caste. And finally, the Carpactin are a race of sentient fungoid creatures who were encountered by the Tau Empire during the Fifth Sphere of Expansion. They communicate entirely through bursts of ultraviolet color, whose strong emanations prove surprisingly effective at subduing and transfixing living beings, making them docile. After the Watercasts observed this action, the Tau Empire quickly negotiated a client-state treaty with the Carpactin and made them part of the greater good. And those were 40 facts on the Tau Auxiliaries. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. This is a huge compilation of all the Tau races videos that we've done in the past, put into one spot so that you can sit down, paint your minis, and just listen to this almost hour-long video. I hope you guys enjoyed. Thank our patrons on Patreon. It's because of them that we can create these videos. And if you have any suggestions for other topics of 40K, you know what to do. Just comment down in the comment section below. I'll talk to you guys tomorrow. This is Gershwan with One Mind Syndicate signing out.
Always used to put my freedom first in any situation.